I'm going to be talking about the importance of conservation and the scope of heritage conservation in Bhagalpur. So before we start, it is very important first to identify what exactly is the heritage of Bhagalpur in order to realize the scope of it. So just quickly, a quick historical layering of Bhagalpur. So we see that Bhagalpur, the area, has been mentioned in relics and in historic scriptures. So first mention of the area of Bhagalpur we see in the later Vedic period, which is 7th to 14th century, when the area of Champa used to be the capital of the Anga Empire, which was one of the 16 Mahajanapads mentioned in the later Vedic period. Then it was later annexed by the Magad and it became a part of the Mauryan Empire. Then we see the Palas coming in, which was the time when Bhagalpur was an important Buddhist learning center. Later, we see Mughal influence in the area, and then since 1765, the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II gave the area of Bhagalpur to the British East India Company, and since then we see British influence in the city. It became an important trade center of the Bengal Presidency. Then in 1936, we see the Bengal presidency splitting into the Odisha, Bihar, and Bengal presidency. And then since independence till today, we see Bhagalpur as an important district of Bihar. Quickly, these are the few typologies of built heritage which we can see in Bhagalpur. So since built heritage is it's an example, it's a specimen of the historical time period in which the buildings were built. So it's an important depiction of the historical layer, and we see many different typologies. We see, since there is Ganga, so we see many ashrams and temples along the river. We see many revered Sufi shrines which are as old as during the Mughal period. Bhagalpur has been an important Buddhist and Jain center, so we see there are old Buddhist institutions, there are Jain temples, and since the British, there are a lot of British structures. Of course, there's a clock tower, there are several churches, and various buildings which came up during the British time. Along with all these identified structures, the entire cityscape of Bhagalpur is dotted with many abandoned structures, which mostly by the looks of it depict that they came up during the British period. Now, these are structures which are not necessarily listed or identified, or most of them seem that they do not have a current use, and they seem dilapidated. So this is the aspect which we are going to cover later in the presentation. But quickly, since we are talking about overall heritage of the city, we also see an important aspect of Bhagalpur's heritage is its cultural landscape. Cultural landscape, defined by UNESCO, is any area where humans and nature they come together. So we see, since Ganga is a sacred sacred river, and it flows along Bhagalpur, so there are ghats, there are temples. This aspect, as Salim sir also said, has been identified in various aspects, and it is also heritage wise, it's a very important aspect of Bhagalpur which needs to be tapped. Then, of course, everybody knows the intangible heritage of Bhagalpur, which is the traditional knowledge system of silk and textile cottage industry, the sericulture. So, as you all know, Bhagalpur is one of the principal seats in Bihar and also all over India, which is one of the largest producers of Tussar silk and the Bhagalpur silk variety, which Bhagalpur is, of course, very famous for. So quickly, we'll just assess all these heritage values which exist in the city, all these different layers which need to be looked into. So there's an archaeological value. We see ancient Vikramshila University, which is very closely located to Bhagalpur city. Then there's a historical value, as we just saw in the historical layering. So Bhagalpur has a very complex and very complicated historical background, many different layers which have dotted the entire timeline of Bhagalpur. So this really brings out Bhagalpur as a historic city, which is, I think, missing from the notion and the overall narrative of Bhagalpur which exists today. Then, of course, since it's such a historic city, there are there's an architectural ensemble which belongs to all these historical times. Religious value, as I said, it is an important Buddhist center, it's an important Jain center. There are many Sufi shrines, and because of Ganga, and there are various temples. And in fact, for Christians also, Roman Catholic diocese which exists in Bhagalpur. So it's an important religious center, and of course, again, the intangible cultural value, which is the traditional knowledge system of sericulture. So now, a very basic, I've prepared this presentation as a very basic, so just like we're just discussing the basics of the basic question is, why should we even conserve our heritage? So the first point is that historical site, it has an important story to tell. Every heritage site has a story which connects us to our past. Then heritage gives us a sense of belongingness, pride, and association. So when we go out of our city, we feel proud of, or if someone comes to our city, we feel proud about the heritage which we have. We always want to show it when we go out of India. So it's the heritage of India which we feel associated with or proud about. Then I think a very important point is that heritage has a very huge potential as city branding, which Salim sir also emphasized quite a lot. And there are many, not just heritage, there can be many ways which can brand a city, but heritage is also a very important aspect of it. And there are many cities which have branded their cities on the basis of their heritage. And previously, we have seen that Bhagalpur has a lot of potential to be tapped as a heritage city. And I'm not saying that you should only look at development on the basis of heritage, but it is something which cannot be ignored and which should not be ignored. So, if we tap the energy which Bhagalpur has in terms of heritage, there is a lot to be harnessed, and it can do a lot for the betterment of the identity of the city, which I think Bhagalpur has only managed to brand itself as a center for Bhagalpur silk and Tussar silk. And sadly, it is the common notion is that it is still now known for the violences which happened in 1989. So I think this is some aspect which can really be tapped into to improve the identity of the city. And then, of course, heritage sites can be a great boost for economics as well. If the heritage sites can be used for tourism, or even if we can reuse the structures to tap the economics of it, there is a huge scope, which, and this is the fifth point which we will be elaborating further. So talking about these structures and what can be done about the abandoned structures which are lying around, which people don't even know what is the significance of these structures or why are these important. So there's a technique which we use in heritage conservation, which is known as adaptive reuse. So adaptive reuse basically refers to the process of reusing any existing heritage building for a purpose other than it was originally built for. So it can be an old haveli which can be conserved and reused as a heritage hotel. It can be reused as a museum. There are many aspects which need to be considered to come up with a particular solution, which also we'll be discussing. So first, let's just discuss why is adaptive reuse an important tool for heritage conservation. So firstly, it is the appropriate use of existing building stock. So these are heritage buildings which are lying abandoned in a dilapidated condition. They are not being used. They mostly get encroached, and they become a hub for antisocial activities. If we use the existing building stock and we conserve it and reuse it, refurbish it, so it can save a lot of energy, time, and money which goes into new constructions, which is also not very sustainable, especially in today's day and age when we talk about energy and cities becoming concrete jungles. So when if we can already use a building which has a footprint and not create more footprints for every small purpose. Second, it is important to conserve and maintain. In conservation, we say that the best way to conserve a heritage structure is to put it to use. As soon as you just conserve a building and again leave it abandoned, or just put a lock to it, monumentize it, so again it will eventually deteriorate. So the best way is that when the building is being built, it will be cleaned every day, it will be eventually maintained every day, and that also increases the life of a structure on the whole. Third point, I think, is it is very economical and sustainable. If economics is an important point here. So it is important that if you reuse a structure, and there can be some economic revenue which the building generates, maybe through tickets, or through whatever reason, if the building is economically viable, so it also, some portion of the profit can definitely be dedicated to the regular maintenance of the structure. So that converts the heritage structure from a liability to an asset. Maybe be it a private heritage structure or a government heritage structure, everybody feels that it's an added liability to conserve a structure. But as soon as it starts generating revenue, not only do you get encouraged to maintain it, but also the costs and the efforts are taken care of. So everybody wants something in return. So if it is economical, then it is also sustainable to keep maintaining it. And fourth, and the most important point, is that it involves the community. Now, as soon as you just monumentize a building, people buy a ticket and just go visit it, that is a very one-sided interaction to the heritage structure. But as soon as people start using it, there is a dialogue which is initiated between the heritage structure and the people, the community. So automatically people start connecting more to the heritage. Suppose there's an old haveli, or a old any structure which people just associate as a monument, but as soon as maybe it is converted into an institute, or it is converted into a craft center, or something which people can use and interact with, so they start associating with the heritage not just as a monument, but also as their college, or as their they start making memories with it, they start associating with it. So as soon
Ananya,
as the community, yes.
Ananya, I would give you another minute to summarize
Yeah, I'm sorry, i'll just
what
i'll
the
just i'll just
yeah
summarize it. Yeah.
yeah.
So the community involvement is important. Then next, quickly, we'll just go through the aspects which one should take care of while adaptive reusing a structure, which is function follows form, that whichever reuse you propose should be in conjunction with the already existing structure, and the structural strength should support the reuse. And then the proposed whatever is the reuse, it should require minimum intervention. And then the reuse should not just respond to the building, but also to the urban context. It is very interdependent. And of course, as I said earlier, economic feasibility and viability. If it is not economically feasible, then it will not sustain itself. Quickly, I'll just talk about a project which I am associated with right now. It is the Lucknow Smart City, and under the four pillars of Lucknow Smart City. One is Samruddh Lucknow, which talks about the heritage, similar to Bhagalpur Smart City also, which also talks about the heritage of the city. So I hope in future they also take the building level into consideration. So these are three buildings which I'll just quickly, through pictures, I'll just show some before and after pictures and what reuse we are suggesting. So this is the Koti Farad Baksh, which originally used to be the resting quarters and personal library. I'm so sorry, there's a mistake. This used to be a residential quarters for the Nawabs, and we are proposing it to convert it into an arts and craft museum. Second, this is Koti Gulistane-Ram. This used to be the resting quarters and personal library for the Nawabs, which we are converting, restoring into a tourist interpretation center. And lastly, this is the before and after picture of Koti Darshan Vilas, which was the residential quarters for the Begums, and which we are converting into skill development center. Now, many aspects, all these aspects which we mentioned earlier, were looked into it, and at urban level, at economic level, and then we came up with these proposals. So I think Bhagalpur also holds a lot of potential, along with placemaking and like the points which Salim sir mentioned. At small building levels, these abandoned structures can be put to a lot of use, and the city's identity has a lot of potential to be developed as a heritage city. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ananya. It is uh, really very informative uh, uh, things that you have talked about, and I think
Thank you.
we need to elaborate on that. And then this time we are just putting forward the ideas. We will elaborate on that later.